Namaskara. Welcome to our house Navaratri Gombe 2025. This time, the story we are telling is of a prince of the Kuru dynasty. So, we start the story from the top. The first panel. King Shantanu of the Kuru dynasty, king of Hastinapur, has gone hunting in a forest. There he met this beautiful woman and he was instantly in love with her. So he asked her if she would marry him and she agreed but named some conditions. She said that she would leave him if he ever questioned her actions, questioned who she was, and if he ever said a cruel word to her. King Shantanu agreed to the conditions and they got married. They lived happily in the palace and soon enough they had a baby. The king was very happy to have a baby, but to his shock, his wife threw the baby into the river. The king was shocked, but he remembered the conditions and he stayed quiet. A year later, they had another baby, and again the queen threw the baby into the river. Again, the king was silent. This repeated itself a total of 7 times. 7 babies were thrown into the river by the queen. When the 8th baby was born and the queen was carrying the baby, King Shantanu was terrified that she would throw the baby again into the river. So he ran to her and just called her a cruel woman and he questioned her. He asked, which woman throws her own baby into the river? Who does such a cruel thing? Who are you? Why are you doing such cruel acts? So the queen, tells King Shantanu, oh, you've broken all the conditions I set, so I'll have to leave you. But before I leave, I will tell you the answers to your questions. So she reveals that she is Ganga, the river goddess. And she tells that she threw 7 babies into the river because they were Devdas who were cursed to be born on earth and who wanted to be relieved of life on earth quickly. So this is the backstory that Ganga revealed to Shantanu. There were 8 Devtas known as the Ashtavasus. The Ashtavasus had gone on a picnic to a forest along with their wives. There, the wife of one of the Vasus, known as Dyu, had wanted the divine cow that sage Vasishta owned. Dyu hatched a plot to steal the cow and took the help of his brothers. So together they stole the cow. Sage Vasishta came to know of this and he cursed the 8 Vasus to be born on earth. When the Vasus pleaded with the sage to be relieved of the curse, he said that 7 of them could be born on earth and die immediately and come back to heaven. However, Dyu, the mastermind of the plot, would not be given that concession. He had to be born on earth and live there. So Ganga said that was the reason she had thrown 7 babies into the river, because they were the 7 Vasus, and the last one, the 8th one, was going to be the baby that lived on earth. So that was the baby Ganga had. So saying, Ganga said, I'm going to keep this baby and I'll leave you. So she went with the baby. Now the king was lonely, but he had to fulfill his duties as king and rule. A few years later, when King Shantanu was walking along the Ganga, he saw a boy that would be of the same age as his son. And then the boy vanished. So Shantanu went to Ganga and pleaded, Ganga, can you please tell me "Who is the child that I saw just now?" he asked. Ganga revealed herself along with the boy, and she told Shantanu that this was indeed his son, Devavrata. Ganga told Shantanu that Devavrata was well educated and fit to be a king. So she sent Devavrata along with Shantanu to Hastinapur. Shantanu declared to his subjects that Devavrata was his son and would be the future king. A few years later, when Shantanu was walking along the Yamuna, he spotted a fisherwoman, Satyavati, and he fell in love with her. Shantanu approached Satyavati's father, a fisherman, and requested for her hand in marriage. But the fisherman set forth his own condition. His condition was that his grandson, the child born to his daughter Satyavati, had to be the king after Shantanu. Shantanu rejected this because he did not want to deny Devavrata his right as the prince. So Shantanu returned to his kingdom, but he was sad, unable to forget Satyavati. Devavrata found what was bothering his father and he approached the fisherman. When the fisherman set forth his condition, Devavrata promised that he would give up all his claims to the kingdom. The fisherman was still not satisfied. He said, "You have given up your right, but what about your future children?" Then Devavrata promised that he would never marry and would remain a brahmachari all his life. Therefore, the question of his children claiming the throne would not arise. At this point, all the devatas who bore witness to Devavrata's vow showered flowers and they called him Bheeshma, Bheeshma of the terrible vow. King Shantanu rewarded his son's sacrifice by giving him a boon, the boon of Ichha Mrityu, meaning death at will. Bhishma could choose the time of his death. Now Shantanu married Satyavati and they had two children. The older son, Chitrangada, was killed in battle. Shantanu also died and the younger son, Vichitravirya, was placed on the throne by Bhishma, who ruled on his behalf until he came of age. When Vichitravirya was old enough to marry, Bhishma went to the Swayamvara organized by the king of Kashi for his three daughters, Amba, Ambika and Ambalika. Bhishma fought all the other suitors and carried all three princesses to Hastinapur. He intended for all three to marry Vichitravirya. However, Amba, the oldest, told Bhishma that she wished to marry King Shalva and she would have done so at the Swayamvara had she not been carried away. So Bhishma let her go to Shalva. And the other two, Ambika and Ambalika, married Vichitravirya. Amba went to Shalva, who rejected her. He said, "You were carried away by another, so I will not marry you." So Amba came to Bhishma and said, "Since Shalva has rejected me, you have to marry me now." Bhishma told Amba that it was not possible because he had vowed not to ever marry. So Amba went to Parashurama, who was the guru of Bhishma. Parashurama had taught Bhishma the art of warfare. She requested Parashurama to convince Bhishma to marry her. Parashurama tried telling Bhishma, but Bhishma again mentioned how his oath prevented him from marrying Amba. Parashurama and Bhishma duelled for 23 days, at which point Bhishma won the duel. So Amba could not make Bhishma marry her. So Amba was frustrated and wanted revenge. She thought Bhishma was the cause of all her suffering. So she meditated to Shiva, and after 12 years of severe penance, Lord Shiva appeared and asked her what she wanted. Amba wanted to be the person to kill Bhishma. Lord Shiva reminded Amba that Bhishma had the boon that he could die at will. So he gave her the boon that she would be instrumental in Bhishma's death. And that would happen in her next birth. Amba killed herself so that her next birth would start soon. In the meantime, Vichitravirya, the prince who had married Ambika and Ambalika, died. And he did not have children. So, the Kuru dynasty was left without princes to continue the line. So, Satyavati approached Bhishma and asked him to marry Ambika and Ambalika and then to further the line. Bhishma respectfully told his stepmother that he couldn't do so because he had promised never to marry. Then Satyavati called upon her older son Vedavyasa to come and impregnate her daughters-in-law Ambika and Ambalika. When Vedavyasa Muni arrived, Ambika was terrified, so she kept her eyes closed. She gave birth to a blind son. Ambalika turned pale in fear and her son was born pale, known as Pandu. Vedavyasa also blessed a maid with her son and he is known as Vidur. Bhishma oversaw the education and growth of the three boys and subsequently had Dhritarashtra married to Gandhari, Pandu married to Kunti. Pandu subsequently also married Madri. Initially, Pandu was placed on the throne of Hastinapur because Dhritarashtra was blind. However, Pandu later gave up the kingdom to go to the forest. Then Dhritarashtra became king. Dhritarashtra had 100 sons, Pandu had 5 sons. They did not get along, they fought. There was the game of dice and there was the infamous Draupadi Vastraharan scene. Bhishma was a witness to Draupadi's Vastraharan, however, he was unable to prevent it. Finally, it all came down to war. It was the Kurukshetra war. Bhishma fought on the side of the Kauravas and he was made the commander-in-chief of the Kaurava army. For 9 days, Bhishma caused havoc among the Pandava army. On the 9th night, Yudhishthira went to Bhishma and asked him how they could defeat Bhishma. And he replied that as long as he held weapons, no one could defeat him. However, if a woman came in front of him, he would drop his weapons. Yudhishthira carried this information back to his camp where Krishna made a plan. Remember Amba? She was reborn as Drupada's child, known as Shikhandi. Shikhandi was born a woman who subsequently became a man because a yaksha decided to swap his gender with her. So Shikhandi became a man while the yaksha became a woman. So this Shikhandi was Draupadi's brother. Krishna planned for Shikhandi to stand in front of Arjuna, and when Bhishma spotted Shikhandi, he would drop his weapons, allowing Arjuna to attack him. This is exactly what happened, and Bhishma allowed himself to be attacked by Arjuna and he fell to a rain of arrows. So Bhishma lay on a bed of arrows, and when Bhishma fell, all the warriors gathered around him. Bhishma wanted a pillow, so Arjuna placed 3 arrows as a pillow for Bhishma. Bhishma was thirsty, so Arjuna shot an arrow into the ground from where Ganga came to give her son water. Bhishma narrated the Vishnu Sahasranama, so that is where we get this divine shloka. And then Bhishma told the others to continue with the war and he would wait for an auspicious moment to leave this earth. So the war was over. Bhishma lay on the battlefield when the war happened and even when it was over. And Bhishma waited for Uttarayana, after which he left this earth. This concludes this year's Navaratri story. Thank you.